Ed asked me to speak at this because not only have I never been to one of these men's breakfasts before, but Ed doesn't know what it's like to speak to people older than him. It's
Wait a minute, Joe's here. Hold on. Joe and Carl are here.
I mean, there's only one person here that's younger than me, so this is why I speak to the youth. I'm not the congregation yet. Anyway, today I was thinking about what I wanted to speak about. I mean, half of you guys have seminary degrees, so it's not like I can necessarily teach you anything biblical, so I just figured I would talk about something that I'm kind of going through or experiencing now. And so I'm going to start with the story about a guy named Henry Brown. Henry Brown was born in 1815 on a Virginia plantation, and he was a slave, and he was born to a good slave owner, meaning that he wouldn't beat him or his family, but he was still a slave. And so one day Henry Brown fell in love with this woman named Nancy, and so Henry went to the slave owner and said, I want to marry Nancy, but I need your word that you won't separate us. You're going to keep the two of us together. So the slave owner gave him his word that he would keep Henry and Nancy together. A few years later, Nancy started having a lot of kids, so she was taking a lot of time off from work, and the slave owner said, I can't handle this, I'm going to get rid of Nancy. So he shipped Nancy up to a plantation in North Carolina and kept Henry on the plantation in Virginia. So Henry was really upset about this. He tried to connect with people around town and see if he could find a way to escape from his plantation and get reunited with his family up in North Carolina. He decided, he talked to a man who knew a man who knew a man, and ironically half of their names were Smith. So Smith talked to Smith, who talked to Smith, who worked in a post office and was a friend of slaves and was kind of for the, abolition of slavery. And he decided to help him out. And they decided that the only way that Henry could escape from his plantation in Virginia was if he got a sick day. The only day he could get a sick day is if he put his hand in sulfuric acid and melted away one of his fingers. So he did that, which earned him one single day off of work on the plantation. So he did that. He wrapped his hand up with a cast, went to Smith, and Smith put him in a box this big, about 2 by 2.5 by 3-ish feet, and they decided to put Henry Brown in the box. I was going to get in it, but half of you would be able to see me, so just for the sake of illustration, imagine a guy about my size squeezing into a box this big and being shipped from Virginia to North Carolina. And that would be, back then, that was about a 27-hour trip. So they put him in the box, he was curled up, tucked up into a ball. They nailed the top of the wooden box down, and he was just inside of it for hours and hours and hours, hoping no one would block his air holes, hoping he wouldn't get tipped upside down. And so he goes from one train to a steamboat, and on the second train, they're loading him on, flip him upside down. He's upside down for 8 hours, just thinking he's going to die because all the blood in his body is in his head. His eyeballs are about to burst out. And he can't say anything, obviously, because he's a slave being shipped in a box. And not only that, but there's people sitting on top of him in this train car, just talking, chatting, drinking beer, shooting the breeze. And so 8 hours he's upside down. Finally, he gets to Philadelphia. They kind of missed the address on the box, I guess. But he made it to a free state. He's in someone's living room. They pry the top off the box, and he hops out a free man. And he decides, I kind of like being free. I don't necessarily want to go get my family now. Word starts to spread about Henry Brown, and he starts to get a little more famous. But I'm going to pause there and rewind, because I forgot to pause when he was inside the box, which is the part I wanted to zoom in on. I'm talking today about patience, about waiting, and kind of how aggravating and frustrating it is. So I kind of unofficially dubbed this message the powerlessness of patience, because when you're in a season where you have to wait, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it except to wait. So in my life, in the past several months, for instance, there was this girl who I was really, really interested in. I'm still a single dude. So I was really interested in this girl. I really liked her. I really wanted her to like me back. And I told her that. I shared my feelings with her, and she said, I'm going to need some time to think about it. And so there's this week or so where I was just waiting, and there was nothing I could do except wait. You know, it's one of those things where you can't go and change your mind. You can't, you know, being men, I feel like we like taking action. We like being able to get something in our own hands and do something. But in a situation like that, you have to do nothing but wait. I'm in a similar situation with this book I've written. I wrote the book, 55,000 words. I got it to my agent. He sent it out to 6 different publishers, and now we wait. And there's nothing I can do to speed up their mind. I can't speed up the process. I'm just waiting. Because one day a word's going to come. It's either going to be a yes or a no from these 6 different publishers. But in the meantime, there's literally nothing I can do. And if you look through the Bible, almost every single person in the Bible has had seasons like this where they've had to wait. More often for years or decades. For instance, Moses was a shepherd for 40 years. Abram, God shows up to Abram and says, hey, I'm going to make you into a great nation. I'm going to bless you. Through you, all nations on earth will be blessed. 10 to 20 years later, God shows up to him again in Genesis 15 and says, hey, I'm still your shield. I'm your great reward. You're going to be a great nation. And I love Abram's response. He says, but God, look at my situation. I'm childless. My slave is going to be my inheritor of all my property, all my land. Look at me. And God's like, okay, why don't we just make this official? Let's make a covenant. And right there, then and there, God makes covenant with Abram. And from that point on, it says, Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Later, I love the story in Exodus 14 when the Israelites come to the Red Sea, and the Egyptians are closing in behind them. And they start grumbling, and they say, what the heck, Moses? You brought us out to the desert, and the Egyptians are hot on our tail. They're going to crush us, destroy us, and kill us all. And then Moses hears from the Lord, and he turns to the Israelites and says, the Lord will fight for you. All you need to do is be still. And I like that because it's so powerless, you know? Are we really trusting the Lord when we're trying to take everything into our own hands and fight for ourselves and get everything done? Or are we content to wait and let the Lord fight for us in all these situations? Because I realize that the issue isn't will we wait, the issue is how will we wait? When things aren't moving, when things aren't going quickly, when things aren't going the way we want them to, how are we waiting? Are we waiting with this attitude of angst and complaint and trying to get things done, take things into our own hands? Or are we content to let the Lord move and work for us and through us and use others in our lives, especially in situations where we may feel powerless? And we really hate it as men, but I think that throughout the entire Bible we see these examples of people who waited well and people who did not wait well. People who were patient, people who were impatient. I was thinking about this attitude of intently waiting on the Lord, and I was thinking about anytime there's a girl I'm interested in, bringing it back to that, as a single guy, that's like on my mind 75% of the time. So, you know, with iPhones, you text someone, and then right away you can tell if they've read it or not. So there'll be nights where I'm sitting on my phone talking to a girl I'm interested in, and I'm just sitting there watching the screen, waiting for it to say read. You know? Like staring at it, saying like, what's she gonna say? Did I say the right thing? You're so nervous, you're intently waiting. And I could literally spend 10 minutes just staring at my phone screen, doing nothing, but waiting for those little words to appear where it says read.
Not realizing that she turned off the read receipt.
Yeah.
Or she went to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, or she fell asleep with the phone.
You're intently waiting for that. But I realize if I apply that same principle to God, it's like I'll give him maybe 1 minute. And if he doesn't show up, I'm out. I'm doing something different. You know? God, show up. God, why aren't you doing this? Okay, you're not going to answer me. All right, I'm going to go to Walmart, buy a DVD, get a Redbox. You know, like we don't apply the same principle of waiting to God as we do these other things that we desire in our lives so desperately. And so I guess that's my encouragement today, is to be men who wait on the Lord, men who wait patiently, men who are okay with powerlessness. And I guess to bring it back to Jesus, I realized as I was thinking through this, you always have to include the gospel in every message. Jesus is the ultimate waiter. He waited thousands and thousands of years before he came to earth. And I pictured him up there in heaven, just like kind of looking down, saying like, all right, God, can I go now? Can I go now? Can I go now? And God finally says, okay, the Jews are in captivity. Why don't you go down to this little manger? He lives on earth, he dies, he raises from the dead, he ascends, and he's up there right now preparing a place for us. He's saying, can I go back? I want to go get my bride. I want to go get her now. I want to go get her now. But he's patient. He's waiting. He's the ultimate example of patience. And because he's patient, we also are free to be patient as well. Yeah, that's all I had. I guess the end of the story that I started with, it's kind of disappointing. I'll tell you that now. Henry Brown is free. He becomes a celebrity. The man who mailed himself out of slavery was what he was known for. He goes to England, travels all around England speaking. His family is still slaves in North Carolina. And after the kind of celebrity of him being a man in the box kind of wears off, he just became a magician. And the ironic part is he made it to about 60 before he even came back to America. And by that time, the Emancipation Proclamation, I think it was, had been signed. So he and his family had been released from slavery. And by that time, he was 60, he comes back to America, and he still traveled around with the exact same box he had been mailed in, doing tricks with it, curling himself up inside of it, the 60-year-old guy doing magic tricks. He remarried when he was in England, never reunited with Nancy, and died kind of relatively unknown. No one really knows where or when he died even. So that's the end of the story. But I wanted to focus on the 27 hours he spent inside the box, powerless and waiting for someone else to come and pop the top off the box.
What about the chick?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
girl.
what about the girl?
Nancy?
Yeah.
As far as I know,
The
No.
one you're waiting for.
Caught him blindsided there.
That's the one.
the girl was a no, the book is still unknown.
Thanks, Ethan.
Thanks, Ethan.